Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that planning and scheduling leaders face on a day-to-day basis. My name is Micah Piippo, and I'm a planning and scheduling manager for Intel.
And my name's Greg Lawton. I'm the CEO of an AI schedule management company called Nodes and Links.
On today's episode, we are going to cover the topic of how to get something approved. When you're at work and you're trying to climb the ladder, or you're trying to differentiate yourself in an organization, providing new ideas is essential to getting ahead. But part of providing a new idea is getting people on board and getting approval for it. So today, I'll be walking through a presentation that I've put together that you can use as well. We'll provide a template of it below that provides you a framework for getting anything approved. Now, Greg, I know you've had lots of experience in the past about getting things approved. Why don't you kick things off by just talking about how this is an important skill to have and maybe some tactics you've learned along the way?
Absolutely. So if I was to talk about incredibly high value skills that transcend across many roles in an organization, one would be interviewing, another would be chairing meetings, another would be writing business cases, which is part of getting things approved. Fundamentally, getting something approved is either a light, medium, or heavy business case. You cannot generally achieve any senior status without the ability to compile business cases. So if you think about it, if you have a team of 10 people and you need 12, I need to justify 12 people and get that approved. What I'd say is that the getting things approved sits on a matrix. It sits from light touch to heavy touch, and it sits from informal to formal. This skill set applies across all of them. It just depends on how detailed you are with the specific ask. Just to kind of outline this, some tips and tricks. My start is you always pyramid principle this. So you have to start. There's a challenge. We're going to be late on the schedule. I believe I can recover it by 2 months. 2 months is worth 20 million to us. I need 4 engineers and 2 schedulers to be able to do this. I'm going to put in a proposal within 2 days to get this. That's the kind of very short, high level that people need. And then you'd break it down. With that, Micah, why don't you give some thoughts or crack on with your presentation?
Let's crack on. Give the people what they want. All right, here we go. Can you see it?
Yes. I like the title.
Yep, the Getting Something Approved presentation. Your name here. So again, we'll provide a link to this down below. You can use this presentation as much as you want, wherever you want. Essential agenda slide, and we're going to work through these, but part of this, you mentioned the pyramid. So I like to start off any sort of approval with the ask. Mm-hmm. So at the very beginning, start off with what you're asking for. What's the big summary? I think you did a good job highlighting an example earlier. Current challenges, current costs, potential solutions, how the solution will help fix the problem. What's that return on that on investment we're going to see, and an implementation timeline.
Just before we dive on, I just want to explain to everyone here why Micah and I hammer get the ask up front and the pyramid principle. The reason for that is the vast majority of people are trained in essay writing. When you're at school, you write essays, and when you're at university, you write essays. And essays are a timeline story. It's a start, a middle, and an end, and the end is kind of the conclusion. When you're actually trying to get things done and propose things at work, and actually this goes beyond, it goes into sales, it goes into pitching, it goes into vision selling, it goes into a lot of things. That entire framework is reversed. You start with the end. I have a dream, the end. And then you justify the journey going there. What you have is a lot of, for example, engineers who are trained to build up to a conclusion, think that is how you also put together business cases. Incorrect. That is how to bore people and to make people think that what you're talking about is irrelevant.
I believe, did Martin Luther King start the speech with, "I have a dream"? I think he started with the pyramids. Anyways,
I don't think he started.
Different topic.
He did an incredible speech, and other people went, "Oh my god, he's pyramid." Like they, great.
Yeah.
You learn from great speakers, and they created frameworks off great speakers. But yes,
shout out to all those history podcasts. Feel free to jump over there and actually learn from those people. So this slide, initial slide, the ask slide. So when you're going in for an ask, you're going to be asking for either dollars. You're going to be asking for people's time. You're going to be asking for something. If you weren't asking for something, then you should just go do it. If you didn't actually need something from somebody, then you wouldn't do it. So what I like to do is just, what is the big ask up front? And then if it's money or whatever it is afterwards, like what's the return on that ask? And then a couple bullet points that explain that return. And then most asks start in a pilot phase. So then you give them the big tuna fish at the bottom. To me, the reason why I like this framework up front and why I think it just gets to the point quickly. So that way, as they start walking through the slides, they're like, if you ask, let's say for $30,000, they can be thinking in their minds, is this worth $30,000? That's the journey we plan to take you on.
I'll give an example as we go through to bring it live. I want to automate all reporting on project 1 for a cost of $30K. By automating project reporting, I'll release 10,000 hours back into the project that are worth $3 million. If we scale this across every project, we'd save $30 million a year and have more standardization.
That's exactly how you do it. Excellent work. Then if we're going into the framework of how people would look at your ask, you need to now paint the picture of why this is a problem. Most people aren't going to be living at your desk in your circle and fully understand the day-to-day issues. And you probably have this long list of hundreds and hundreds of issues. You need to distill, synthesize them, and then bring them into 3 to 4 bullet points, basically. I like to use some simple graphics on the challenges side to evoke a little bit of emotion. And these challenges will usually go to very common root causes: money, time, and people's frustration. So going back to your previous example, Greg, if it was reporting, we're wasting a bunch of money and people's time doing analog tasks that could be automated. This is creating a much longer reporting cycle, and you're actually, Mr. VP, who's going to approve this, much later getting your information instead of earlier, so you can't make critical decisions. And overall, both of this is kind of frustrating everyone who's involved in it. The people who are creating the reports, they are frustrated how long it's taking and how much time they're spending on it. The people who have to then present and use this information, it's late, so they're frustrated. And so that's where I kind of like to blend in a little bit of dollars, time, and people's frustration. You can really use anything, and you want to be specific and have those items resonate with who you're presenting to.
If anyone noticed there as well, Micah also used a little bit of the SPIN framework, which is situation, problem, identification, needs, payoff. So this situation's happening. It's created this problem. By the way, a problem in itself isn't a bad thing. The impact and the needs payoff. So he said, for you, Mr. Director, this is the pain, and the solution then will give us the needs payoff. By solving this problem, you will get this back. But remember, it's just that 3 segmentation: situation, pain, implication. Pains and implications are different things. Reporting is slow. Okay. And why do I care? You care because you're not getting information in the time you need to get it. Okay, I do care now.
One other thing I would point out that we didn't address at the beginning, you really need to nail your title slides, because that's what people are going to read first. Yeah. There's a couple different frameworks that are out there. We'll link them below. The most prevalent one that I've heard recently that I really like is action-based titles that tell a story. across a timeline, and it's a little McKinsey riff.
Yeah, I
But
was thinking you've been reading McKinsey here.
I mean, I think there's a way to do that. It's a reason why that works. And there's a reason why people will pay McKinsey $5 million for a presentation.
Yeah.
And, there's obviously a lot of due diligence and analysis that come behind it and a lot of great thought leadership. But then there's also these stories that are told, and that's how you're going to get an approval. So these titles, you're going to want to sit and bend and make them work for you, and it could be like, the current challenge of reporting is causing extreme frustration. And that is nice and kind of grabby, brings you in and, oh, tell me more about that. Well, it wastes money, people's time, blah, blah. All right, let's keep cracking on before I lose my voice entirely. So you've addressed the emotional side of it. And then that's where I like to then transition into how much moolah is this costing? Now, I would argue that 99.9% of problems you're going to be addressing out there in the project management sphere can be resulted back to dollars, and dollars are what matters because projects have budgets. So I would highly encourage to figure out a way to put together a cost of what this is, bringing. And then, your cost estimate may have 50 items on it. You need to roll those up into 3 to 4 major themes. And why 3 to 4? Because they look pretty on a presentation. And so to me then, and I put the numbers in red because you want the people to focus on that. This is by not addressing this issue of, we can say automated reporting or whatever it is, not hiring people. It's costing us $30,000 per, and then you put the time period in, year, month, whatever it is. Because if you could say the time period in, it also has a multiplication effect on the impact. If it is $30,000 per week, someone in their mind can go, wow, 30,000 times 52. I can't even do that, but I know it's a lot of money.
Some tips and tricks here on calculating that. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't go, if we could only save 1% of this cost. Top down rarely gets approval if it's any meaningful spend. What I would do is do a bottom up, which is one unit of this. So one single report has this impact. And then I would do a story of extrapolation. So one report has this impact. We do 52 of them and build it up that way.
Yeah. And I want to keep providing people examples outside of just the report, because I think this framework can be used for anything. Not hiring an additional person, we're missing out on this opportunity, which costs us this. Like, we're not going through all of the change orders. And so we're missing out on potentially catching X, Y, and Z costing us this. This new process, by doing the old process, is costing us this amount. I mean, you can really, the nice part about this framework is you can apply it to anything.
Not buying this AI software. I'm going to need an additional 30 million budget from you to hire all of the additional labor I'm going to need to actually do the job that you've promised.
Yeah, exactly. And then once you've painted the problem, you've probably the cost of the problem. Hopefully at that point in time, the person's mind is burning with, all right, what's the solution? What can we do to fix this problem? You've got me to the point where I'm like, we got to do something. And one of what I like to do in this situation is show that you've gone out and crevassed whatever it is, and you've looked at either a potential market of software solutions or hiring people full-time, vendor, resources from other teams, these different sorts of styles of processes, whatever it is. And you just paint the picture that I've had these 3 to 4 options, and here is something that is, clearly better, so in this little scatter plot that I put together, you can pick basically anything for your XY, labels. And then you just make that something, obviously that you're proposing. It should be the best. You make it look the best. And then you can talk to what are some of the other options. Other potential solutions you could do on this slide, when you go for potential solutions that could solve it, you could look at doing it in a table format as well. Here are the 3 we analyzed. Here's some of the things we were looking at part of our grading system. Does it have open APIs, or, like what are the like onboarding costs, or, whatever it is, whatever solution it is. You can also put this in a table format as well too. But just showing that you've gone out, you've researched potential solutions should follow your next slide, because then you're going to then dive into the solution you did select. And it gives people kind of that like, oh, okay, they've done their market research. They know what they're talking about. What is that recommendation? So then the next one would be examples of how something works to fix the problem. So you've gone and you've said, hey, here's this something. Here is a specific screenshot, a specific workflow, a specific whatever you want to include. And then you need to talk about, this reporting, a couple clicks of a button, you get your report out. The reports are standardized, and we can actually run even more advanced calculations. If you're looking to hire someone, now we will be able to cover that change order bucket. We'll be able to deep dive and actually review and scrub those change orders. And we'll have someone who can standardize this process to alleviate our overheads on it. You're just diving into explaining what that solution is that's going to help the problem.
Mike, you've just made me think about the value framework. I won't mention it now, but I think you and I need another podcast on the value framework in projects in construction. Essentially, what Micah's doing here with this slide is he's increasing the perception of probability of success. That's what you're doing. If you've pitched something, all decisions to senior leaders are 2 things. One is benefit to cost, and the other is risk. So if I'm thinking, if I get an ROI of 100% and my risk is 0, I will find you $1 billion. If I get an ROI of 500%, but my risk is incredibly high, I might only chance it with 10 grand. This is essentially what you're doing. The risk component is actually one of the largest components to making senior decisions.
Risk plays a tremendous amount in how people think and the psychology and how they think. And there's some real interesting biases along that framework as well too. Cruising on, after you've then said, here's the solution, hopefully they've gone into their brain saying, yeah, that's great, Micah, but how much does this cost me? So then the next slide you're going to hit them with, here is a breakout of the ROI. Let's walk through where we're seeing the costs and then where we're going to see the savings. Now, this is obviously very simplistic, depending on, Greg, you mentioned saving $1 billion. That might actually need some real math done to it. But for the vast majority of asks, when you're getting them going, and if you're just going for a pilot, you don't need a 13 sheet Excel ROI financial analysis. It's essentially here are a couple of the costs that are associated with it. Here are our direct savings, and maybe you can label direct or indirect. Direct would be these are like hours saved, and maybe indirect are potentials that could be realized using it or whatever it is. And then you just are laying out that ROI very plainly. Right? And at the very bottom, a very, thoughtful point on that ROI. So now they know you've done your research on your solution, and here's what we're seeing for the ROI. Now, you can make this as complicated as you want. You could make this the pilot ROI, and then after this slide, you could do here's a yearly ROI. So $200 every year for 10 years. If we do a full implementation, you can add that in there. But I really just wanted to, for most asks, you can get away with one simple ROI if it's fairly low dollars, and then it gets them comfortable with cost savings, what their money is getting them for.
If you're dealing with very small projects, so like real pilots. So for example, if you go, I've heard about automation technology. A lot of our things are manual. I want to propose that we spend $500 on some automation software to see what it does. what your return on your investment can actually be information. So you can say, this will cost $500, but for that, we will know if we can use this kind of software to start to automate all of these processes. Oh, and by the way, if we manage to automate these processes by 50%, that's worth $30 million to the business. So you can have one where one ROI is qualitative and one ROI is a guesswork of quantitative.
That's amazing. I actually never thought of that. That is amazing and a brilliant framework to think, because there's so many technologies out there, and not even technologies, but I just think of it's then viewed as a true pilot and a hypothesis. And so whether it succeeds or not, quotes, succeeds, it's a win.
Yeah, well, this is a very
can help
thing,
kind of tempers people. There's a lot of times in construction, there's like an all or nothing play. Oh, we got to go to this new software or this people process, and we got to go all in. We got to, and a lot of times it's not doing that due diligence of, baby stepping it, figuring out whether this works or not. Does this cover our original, thought process, address the original problem? It's great. I love
this is actually comes down to a core principle. Like what is actually the difference between I'll call venture startup as opposed to a startup just starting a business? What's the difference between a venture startup and an enterprise? The key thing in the textbook definition is that a venture startup is a company in search of a global maxima business model. So it is actually an experimental organization that is conducting experiments, and the return it's trying to get is learning for money. So it's spending money to achieve learning, to find a global optimum business model that then you replicate and grow. So, and by the way, all businesses work like this. It's just the core principle. You can have a very, very old established company, like a construction company that's been around 100 years. And if you go, I want to experiment with automation, you're fundamentally saying, we don't have enough information in the world for me to say if a new business model is going to make us more money. So I need some discretionary spending to gain information. So you're going through the startup phase to then go into, I've got that information and we need to scale this. It's just a very, very key lesson that most people don't actually know.
What's wild here is, as you were saying that, I replaced organization in my mind with person, and it works as well.
Yep. You're either doing two things. So in grand strategy, if people like to know, in grand strategy, there are two things that victors always have: asymmetric information and credible commitment, or asymmetric capabilities. Asymmetric information here is about knowledge of what works and what doesn't. Credible commitment is the tangible ability to actually do something with that knowledge. So, for example, asymmetric capability, I have a nuclear bomb. Credible commitment, I will and can fire it at you. You have to have both. But if you think about it here, asymmetric information, I know that automation will deliver these results. Credible commitment is, and I have the capability to scale it to an entire organization. The two linked together is, I am very, very valuable. So it does work at a person level. You're correct.
I would say all of that minus the nuclear bomb. There you go again, getting Dr. Evil on us. To me, if you were, I just want to leave the nuclear bomb analogy behind. I'm not going to keep iterating off of that. To me, though, this can really help you show value in your organization as the two things you brought up, and I'll say it in probably layman's terms to help me. Number one, you are an idea person. And not only are you an idea person, you're an execution person. So you go find problems and you fix the problem. And that's why I wanted to put this as a presentation for anything, because that is the perfect skill to me, is finding that problem and fixing that problem. And then, not letting people know you're sitting on a nuclear bomb.
You seem to be obsessed with the nuclear bomb analogy, Micah.
I mean, This is, beyond deadlines. I don't know. Anyways, but then after transitioning a bit and actually a little perfectly, kind of timed about our discussion, showing them who you're presenting to, what's your timeline for success? So if approval is granted in this meeting, month 2, we're going to go out and execute the contract and get onboarded. Month 3, we'll pilot on project ABC. And then month 4, we're going to wrap up and come back to you with the results of what's going to happen. Giving some bounds to you of this is the timeline for it. And this is when you can expect to see these next sorts of steps that happen. And this will differ between what you're trying to go do, but it just provides them that understanding that, I got a plan for this. And, we'll be able to then communicate out on how we're doing against the plan.
Keep this simple, by the way.
Yeah.
Even for nuclear bombs, you can keep it simple. Do research, make uranium, make bomb. Don't drop it.
Yeah, don't drop it. Because you can drop the bomb here. If you provide too much, and I guess this is a little bit of a tip for overall in the presentation, you're wading out into the unknown. You're in a kind of a gray space that you aren't going to know a lot about what's going to happen. They're not going to know what's a lot's going to happen. That's why you're going and doing this. But I've just found with type A type people on the executive level, you start laying in all these details in this massive plan. 1, they can't follow it, so it confuses them. And then 2, it just opens you up for, little questions and like nitpicking little items versus like, hey, in a month, we'll just do this. And most people will be like, great, that sounds awesome.
I'm going to say why I think that we could have a very complicated answer of why that is, but I'm going to actually summarize it as one single thing. The job of individual contributors is to produce work. The job of senior executives is to de-risk the business so much so that it is unlikely that the business fails in its objectives. It's actually the reverse. The executives are not there to achieve success. Executives are there to de-risk failure so that success is the only option. If you present things that are complicated to them, complicated is risky because there are many things that can go wrong with a complicated thing. There are a few things that can go wrong with a simple thing. So if you keep it simple, it is perceived as less risky, which is exactly what their job is.
Keep it less simple or more simple. I was getting to the end of the conversation. My voice is dying, so apologies. Yes, absolutely. Keep it simple. The last slide, don't do a backup. Don't do a thank you. Recap what your ask is, and then pause in the awkward silence. So just to recap what we discussed today, I'm asking for, insert software, insert people, X amount of dollars. This pilot again carries this. These are the things we're saying. Let us know how you want to proceed. Mic drop. Move on with your life. See what the response is back.
Don't talk first.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. So you're saying go to the recap slide and then just let there be awkward silence?
Just
awkward.
The awkward silence is the best technique to make people tell you what they truly think. Just stop and stare at them.
Yeah. So I've had presentations where I've gone to the recap slide. I guess I haven't intentionally paused, but something has happened. And basically they're like, yeah, let's just proceed and move on. And then there's no further questions because I don't like the question slide because they have a question. We're all adults. They'll ask it. And I don't like the backup slide because then it's like all this content you didn't put in. Well, then why didn't you put it in who cares? If someone has a question, you can have a separate presentation that has backup in it, but I am 100% dialed in with you. You get to the end of your ask, just be quiet and let the crowd do what they do.
I've got a question, Micah. Let's say that I'm reviewing this and I go, yes, please proceed. What is the thing you do half a second after I say that?
I get up and run out of the room.
Yeah. Shut up and leave. Stop selling once you have sold.
Yeah, I'd say thank you. We'll follow. I'll send you this presentation. for your information. And I'll follow up with you in a week when we have the contracts or POs or whatever that like first step was when that's rolling, and you'll see some email updates from me. Then I just leave the room.
Yep. Yes, I'd like you to proceed. Keep me informed. Absolutely. I'll send you a plan within the next 24 hours, and I'll send you an update next Friday. Shake the hand, leave.
Yeah, the virtual hand. Well, excellent, folks. We've really enjoyed you coming along on this journey. Greg, any final thoughts?
Well, for this one, I'm actually going to flip it round, and rather than give final thoughts, I'd encourage the listeners, as quite a lot have done recently, to actually message us and let us know what they think. Not for any social media algorithm. Micah and I don't really care about that, but more towards tell us where you think is the most valuable piece of information. Tell us where you'd like us to deep dive more. And if there's another kind of thing you'd like us to focus on, let us know too. Micah and I just have a lot of fun doing this. It's a great way to end the week. We're recording this last thing on a Friday. Let us know what you want and we'll do it.
I completely second that, folks. Let us know what you want, what you hear. If we can't figure it out, we'll invite a guest on to help educate us as well. The template that I shared in the call today will be linked below, so feel free to grab it and use it. And let me know if there's something missing from it that you'd like to see done better. So for us at Beyond Deadlines, we really appreciate you listening. Like, subscribe, share, help grow the community. It helps us bring on more interesting guests, better content that we can all give back to you for free. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the next one.